So, Blessed George, I kind of give a brief overview there. He lived from 1871 to 1927, so he was only 56 years old when he passed. Now, our founder, Saint Stanislaus Papczynski, founded the first men's community in the history of Poland, in Poland. That was us, over 350 years ago. We Marians were founded. We were the first men's community in the world to bear the title the Immaculate Conception. And how does that relate to divine mercy? You always hear me say, because God's greatest act of mercy ever bestowed on a creature is the Immaculate Conception. So the two great spiritual weapons of our time, Mary, the Immaculate Conception, the greatest act of mercy, and the divine mercy, Jesus himself, that is the two spiritual weapons of our times. That's why I'm a Marian. That's why you're a Marian helper. So our founder was canonized in 2016, so he is our first saint. But our renovator who saved us, a blessed, is just as important. The Marians have a huge connection to Faustina, not just because we preach divine mercy, not just because our priest brought it to the United States and then to the world, because it was also because Blessed George actually was directly involved in the work of St. Faustina. Because Faustina had a confessor in Poland who she really was happy for, Father Andrasz. But then Jesus sent her to Vilnius. Remember, sometimes he'll send you outside your comfort zone. And she was very nervous because now she wouldn't have her confessor. But she was afraid, but Jesus promised her that he would send her a chosen confessor. And you're going to hear about that at the end of communion when Brother Reuben reads that from the diary. Now, Blessed George at the same time had become the Archbishop of Vilnius, or the Bishop of Vilnius. This is where Faustina was going. So she's going to the place in Vilnius, now modern-day Lithuania, where he, our Marian, was now bishop. So at that time, he called in all the priests that were scattered throughout Europe that were from his diocese, including one by the name of Michael Sapochko. This is an instrumental figure in human history that you've never heard about. And so he is the reason we have divine mercy in many ways. Now, it was in Vilnius that Faustina was sent by our community, and then she met Sapochko after having a vision of him. Again, this is what we'll read about. So Sapochko, who's also blessed, was the one who instructed Faustina to write her diary. Because Faustina, Satan played on her humility and told her, who do you think you are? You're writing all this stuff in a diary. Nobody cares about what you say. You're not being humble. So the devil played on her humility and she burned her whole diary. So what we have is not the original copy. Just like the Bible, we don't have the original copy. And so she burned it. And she was not going to write another word, but Blessed Michael Sapochko made her under obedience. So she did. So after burning it, the devil said she shouldn't want this attention, so that's why she did it. But under Sapochko's direction, she began to write the diary again. So we have a revised copy. So she wrote back what she could remember, but at the same time, Jesus is appearing to her. So that's why the diary, you've heard me say before, we get confused. It's not in chronological order. You don't read it like a storybook. It's like the Bible. The Bible's not meant to be read cover to cover. It pieces the Old with the New Testament. Faustina's diary is written in the same way. It's not chronological, but she'll be in one place at one time and another because she was recalling it in her mind. God does things for a purpose. So now, Blessed George came to the Marians when there was one Marian left, only one of us left. And the persecutions had decimated the Marians. Our Marians were slaughtered, imprisoned, stuck in concentration camps later, but they were just persecuted and so brave that there was one Marian left. Now, when we were down in Washington, D.C., Cardinal Wuerl said, the Marians were renovated by God for the purpose of divine mercy in today's day and age. You've seen Blessed George, some of his photos. He looks kind of mean, kind of imposing. I always thought, wow, he looks like Father Ron. I was like, he just has that imposing figure, but he's so gentle. When I read his journal as a novice, he's very gentle, filled with a lot of insight. And I'm not going to read you a bunch of quotes, but there is one that we Marians read often. And here's what he wrote. It's just a couple sentences. He said, if I may ask, Lord, let me be but a dish rag in your church, a rag used to wipe up messes and then thrown away into some dark corner. I want to be used up and worn out in the same way, so that your house may be a little cleaner and brighter. Afterwards, let me be thrown away like a dirty, worn-out dish rag. That's just an interesting but very practical quote. So to finish up here, he wrote our constitutions so that we could flourish in modern times. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing these live streams. This is just about an example. He came to America. He renovated us in 1909. He came to America in 1913, actually went to Chicago, and he formed the first Marian presence in America, like I said, in Chicago. And this gave the freedom to the Marians they didn't have in Europe. And I'm telling you, we're going to be losing this freedom right here in America if we don't really start to wake up here. If we start embracing socialism and communism, this is the end. It's the end of our freedom. And so this is what Blessed George was escaping in Europe. You want to find out if socialism and communism are the right ways? You could ask Blessed George. He fled it, came to America. At that time, where he was from Vilnius was under Russian rule, which became communism, not much lighter. Now, he founded what was called the Saint Casimir province. Our province, St. Stanislaus, didn't come till a little bit later, but then we merged them. And he started, here's what's interesting, he started something called the Marian Fathers Auxiliaries, which set the stage for the Association of Marian Helpers. We invite all of you to be Marian helpers. It's not about donation. I mean, if God puts on your heart to do that, that's beautiful, but that's not what it's for. It's so we pray for you, you pray for us. That's the key. And by your prayers, you help the mission of divine mercy. You become the hands and feet of Jesus. And so his motto was to serve the church where the need is greatest. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to spread the message of divine mercy all over the world. The need is so great right now. But he was orphaned only at age 10, and he suffered tuberculosis of the bone, just like Faustina. St. Faustina had tuberculosis of the bone. That's what she died from. But it's just another great reason why the Marians are involved in divine mercy, the connection with Faustina. Why, again, the Immaculate Conception, the greatest act of mercy ever bestowed on a creature. And, what's also interesting is in Europe, what was going on in Poland, remember Jesus said a spark will come from Poland to prepare the world for my second coming? What is that spark? Well, we always say it's divine mercy, but when you go deeper, what was going on in Poland? Maximilian Kolbe was bringing Mary back to the world, and St. Faustina was bringing the divine mercy to the world. Again, the two spiritual weapons, Mary and divine mercy. And they lived and worked at the exact same time in the exact same place of Poland. At that same time was Blessed George of the Marians in that area at the same time. Unbelievable. And so We are going, this was all going on at the same time. So anyway, he died after having an appendix operation, and he died on today's date, January 27th, 1927, only 56. So to finish, his personal motto from St. Paul was, overcome evil with good. Boy, we need that today again. Pray for all the unrest. Pray for the division. As I said on Sunday, division is simply caused when people don't agree. And why don't people agree? Because they believe different things. Okay, who's right? Simply, what's right is the truth. The truth. If we all came to understand and believe in the truth and defended the truth, that life is sacred, that we can't redefine marriage, we can't strip religious liberty, these types of things, then you have the foundation for unity. But he really favored that. He remained faithful to this teaching, to this ideal, despite the great personal cost. In the end, both his friends and enemies admitted that he was faithful. In his obituary, a priest friend expressed that he had a smile for everyone, or his friends and supporters, and even his enemies alike. He focused on apologetics. We do that a lot here at the Marians, which is a branch of theology defending Catholic doctrine, which is absolutely unable to be disputed because it fits together. It's the truth. And so he lived a spirituality that was shaped, his holiness, trusting God in his providence for everything. And that's what we need to do. He was aimed at renewing the church through the personal sanctity of each person. The bottom line, we're not going to change anything if we don't first change ourselves. I wasn't a huge Michael Jackson fan, but there was a song he wrote called Man in the Mirror. And it's really a good song because he says, I'm going to start with the man in the mirror. And he said that, basically the song is about how are we going to change the world if we don't start with the man in the mirror. And every time I hear that song come on, it really makes you reflect. And that's what Blessed George said, that the only way we're going to sanctify the church, or I'll put it this way, the only way we're going to sanctify the world is through the sanctity of the church. And the only way we're going to sanctify the church is through the sanctity of its members. Because one member messes up doesn't mean the teaching of the church is bad. It means one member messed up, or two or three or more. And so what that song is about is look in the mirror, start there. And that's what Blessed George taught us. If personal sanctity doesn't happen, then we're not going to have a holy church. And if we don't have a holy church, we're not going to have holy people. If we don't have holy people, we won't have a holy world. What's happening now in Minnesota? What is happening in this, not just this country, look at Iran, look at Europe, all these places. Now there's protests going on in England and all kinds of stuff. All of this is disunity caused by sin. And when we continue to sin, these are the consequences. So until we look in the mirror, personally sanctify ourselves, and then get in line with the truth taught by God through Christ, through his church, we're not going to overcome this. But with God, we will. And as he said, overcome evil with good. Sounds simple, hard to do, but with God's help, all things are possible.